The question most people ask inside a casino is whether they can walk out with their chips. What the casino thinks about the answer is the whole point. When you hand cash across the felt and receive chips in return, you did not swap one kind of money for another. You converted your cash into a financial instrument that only functions inside one specific building. Under Nevada gaming law, a chip is a representative of value that evidences a debt owed by the casino. In that one way, it resembles cash. But cash works at any register in the country. A chip is a claim against one institution only, redeemable at one specific window inside that building. No competing casino is legally required to honor it under Nevada Regulation 12.060. You cannot deposit it at your bank or spend it anywhere outside the building that issued it. So when you hold a $500 chip and walk toward the exit, you are not carrying $500. You are carrying a promise that one specific building will honor if you bring it back. The further you get from that cashier cage, the more things can quietly happen to that promise, and none of it will show on the chip. Can you legally walk out? In almost every gaming jurisdiction, yes. The security guard near the entrance has no authority to stop you from carrying your own property off the premises. When you bought those chips, ownership transferred. Any guard who detained a customer over chips would create a legal situation far more expensive than whatever was in that person's pocket. There is one scenario where pocketing chips is explicitly prohibited. Taking chips off your stack while a hand is still in play is called going south, and casinos ban it because it artificially shrinks your apparent bet size after you already know the outcome. Dealers watch for it. Surveillance watches for it. You can leave with every chip you own once you are finished playing. You cannot slip chips into your pocket while the game is still running. That line is what the table is actually watching for, not the door. What the cameras near the exit are actually watching is whether chip movement looks unusual and whether faces match high-value player accounts. One person leaving with a $50 chip barely registers. What registers is pattern, volume, and identity. And here is something the casino never needs to say out loud. The person who pockets chips and skips the cage is doing the house a quiet favor that compounds reliably across millions of visits every year. We will come back to exactly why before the end of this. Every player who uses a rewards card or gets rated by the floor generates what the casino calls a theo, short for theoretical win. The formula is straightforward. Average bet multiplied by hands per hour, multiplied by time played, multiplied by the house edge equals the casino's expected profit from that session. Floor supervisors watch this figure accumulate in real time for every rated player on the floor. It tells them which players are worth comping, which tables to keep open, and when someone's chip activity does not match their recorded play. The surveillance camera at the exit is the last line of the system. The theo running on every significant player is the first. In 2005, Wynn Las Vegas became the first strip casino to embed RFID transponders in its high-denomination chips, a security response to chip counterfeiting that conventional verification could not contain. Other major properties followed. A $5 chip typically does not carry a tag. A chip worth $100 or more at a major Las Vegas casino very likely does. The tag sits passive until it crosses a reader. Readers are embedded in gaming tables, built into the cage counter, and positioned at security checkpoints through the building. Every time a chip crosses one, the system logs which chip it is, where it was, and when it passed. The casino maintains a live count of which chips are on the floor, which are in the cage, and which have left the building entirely. When chips leave unexpectedly, the casino knows the unique identifier of each specific chip. If that chip needs to be neutralized, the casino can remotely deactivate the RFID tag, rendering it non-negotiable at any window in the building. The Las Vegas Advisor confirmed this directly. The Bellagio used remote deactivation after the December 2010 robbery to make the stolen chips uncashable. Assume you stack $10,000 in chips on the cage counter and ask for cash. The teller asks for photo ID, enters your information, asks which games you played, and places a form in front of you. That form exists because the federal government classifies casinos as financial institutions. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, casinos must report any cash transaction over $10,000 to a federal agency called the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Your name, your identification, the amount, and the date go into a federal database. Not filing is a federal violation for the property. The move most people reach for makes things considerably worse. Cash out $9,000, walk the floor for an hour, then return to cash another $9,000. Staying deliberately under the threshold is a separate federal offense called structuring. The cage logs every transaction by the same player across an entire gaming day. And when that pattern appears, the property files a suspicious activity report rather than a standard transaction form. One records a transaction. The other records an attempt to hide one. Federal investigators do not treat those two documents the same way. The form at the cage is only the first surprise. The clock running on every chip is the second. Every chip has an expiration. Nobody prints on the face. In Nevada, chip retirements are governed by Regulation 12.070. A casino must submit a written redemption plan to the Nevada Gaming Control Board chair at least 30 days before any chip is removed from use. The redemption period runs 120 days, advertised twice weekly in at least 2 Nevada newspapers. Miss the deadline and the casino owes you nothing. The number on the disc stops meaning anything. When Atlantic City casinos began closing after years of declining revenue, chips moved through bankruptcy proceedings rather than cashier windows. Old chips from closed properties sell in collector markets at prices based on rarity, not face value. The chips sitting in a kitchen drawer from a trip a few years ago are somewhere on this spectrum right now. Most people never check. The night of December 14th, 2010, collapsed every one of these layers into a single sequence of events. Anthony Carleo rode a motorcycle to the Bellagio, walked through the casino floor in a helmet, stepped up to a craps table with a handgun, and told the pit crew to hand over chips. He walked out with roughly $1.5 million in chips. Nobody stopped him at the exit. Carrying casino chips off a casino floor is not a crime. The following evening, Carleo came back. He walked into the same casino he had just robbed and started gambling. Within days, the Bellagio had comped him as a high roller with a $600 per night suite and a personal casino host. On New Year's Eve alone, he lost $70,000. By January 22nd, his documented losses at the Bellagio totaled $107,000. But his cash outs during that same period totaled nearly $209,000. The casino's monitoring system flagged the gap. He was extracting more than his recorded play could account for. The problem was the $25,000 cranberry chips. Those were exactly the denomination the Bellagio had fitted with RFID tags. The surveillance team knew the unique identifier of every chip that had left the building. The Bellagio announced publicly those chips would be discontinued, setting a short redemption window before the design was formally retired. After that window closed, every one of those chips was dead at the cage counter. So Carleo tried to sell them on the poker forum 2+2, registering under the username OceanSpray25. A forum member named Matthew Brooks suspected he was the robber and contacted the FBI. Investigators inserted undercover detective Michael Gennaro into the operation, who bought 14 stolen chips from Carleo over 5 meetings. On February 2nd, 2011, 50 days after the robbery, Carleo was arrested at the Bellagio. He was eventually sentenced to 3 to 11 years for the Bellagio robbery. The chips made it structurally impossible to turn the robbery into money. The only route left was to hand them to someone who turned out to be a federal operation. That same characteristic of chips, that they only become real money at one monitored window, is what makes them useful to a completely different kind of criminal for a completely different purpose. The scheme is called chip washing. Someone arrives with cash that has a history they need to erase. They buy chips at the cage, gamble minimally to look credible, then cash out the remaining chips as a casino check rather than bills. The check traces back to gambling, a documented legal source of income. The cash has made a round trip through the chip cycle and come out looking like winnings. Casinos have spent decades shutting this down, which is why the cage asks for identification, logs every transaction by player across the gaming day, and keeps compliance staff trained to recognize the pattern before it completes. The rules apply uniformly to every cage transaction because the cage cannot tell from the transaction alone what kind of money it is looking at. You are the collateral complexity of a system built for someone else entirely. Every chip on the casino floor is money the casino owes and has not yet paid. Under standard accounting, outstanding chips are recorded as a liability. The Wynn Resort's annual SEC filing confirms this directly. Liabilities are recorded for chips in the customer's possession. But a consistent share of that float never comes back. Tourists pocket chips and never return. People keep a chip from a winning session as a physical record of the night. Designs retire before every outstanding chip finds its way home. When a chip stops being returnable, it stops being a liability and becomes revenue, without any game being run or any dealer being paid. The industry calls this breakage. What the casino thinks about the person who skips the cage and pockets their chips is exactly this: a liability that just cleared itself. The scale of that calculation is not accidental. Before chip design became more expensive to manage, many Las Vegas properties released special edition chips tied to holidays, events, and anniversaries specifically because collectors would take them home and never cash them. The Vital Vegas blog documented this practice directly. Casinos once treated collector chips as a planned revenue line, designing them with the intention that breakage would follow. The deliberate engineering of unredeemed chips is the clearest evidence that walking out with your chips is not a problem the casino overlooked. It is an outcome they planned for. The significance of breakage extends beyond casino accounting. The IRS has formally challenged how casinos classify outstanding chip balances, arguing unredeemed chips should be reclassified as taxable income rather than a deferred obligation. Published legal scholarship documents this dispute. That argument from the federal government confirms breakage is real and measurable enough that the government wants a portion of it. This is why nobody watches the exit for chips in your jacket. The casino collected your cash the moment you bought in. The payment was already theirs before you reached the door. The casino has always known you might skip the cage on your way out. They designed the whole system around that assumption, because by the time you reach the exit, the money is already theirs.